Everyone, John Peterson with J. Peterson Photography here. Tonight I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the process I go through to assess an image before I start processing it. In a previous video I went through the logic and my thought process for how I choose which images I want to process. Now that I've selected one, I want to walk you through my mental process for how I make an assessment of what edits I want to do to an image to achieve the final results that I'm going for. So in many ways, this is how I like to look at it, as taking an inventory of the processing steps that I want to take. And part of taking that inventory is really knowing the tools that you have at your disposal, having a vision for what the finished product is going to look like, as well as many people have their own processing style. Some people like things a little darker, some people like to have them a bit punchier. So sort of developing and knowing your own style also influences your inventory and your edits in a particular image. So with that being said, I want to just kind of review a little bit my philosophy around processing. And really, I sort of have created this hierarchy of processing. And at the very top, the most massive type of processing steps you can do are really these global adjustments. And when I say the word global, it's any adjustment that you make that's really going to affect the entire image. So if you're in Lightroom or Photoshop and you just start moving sliders, it's going to affect the entire image. And I'll show you a little bit about what that is. The next step down, so as I'm sorry, let me back up. So as I'm assessing an image, I'll really look to ask the question, are there any global adjustments that need to be made? Yes or no? Then the next step is really looking at regional adjustments, is what I call those. And regional adjustments are those types of tweaks that affect a portion of the image. That could be in a specific location, but more typically it's a color range, it's a tonality range, those types of things. Let's say the midtones throughout the entire image are a little bit soft and you want to punch those up a little bit. That would be what I would call a regional adjustment. Lastly is a targeted adjustment. And this affects specific areas of an image. So let's say there's one little plant that you want to really pop, or there's something that you really want to bring out the shadows in this one little area of an image. These are very specific adjustments and very targeted adjustments that you would make to the image. And again, it's knowing your tool set, knowing what tool is going to do what, will help you decide on which types of adjustments to make in which tools. The one thing to note as we go through this and make global, regional, and targeted adjustments is that you may have to jump back up to a level. I could be doing a very targeted adjustment and I might need to go back because it's changing the balance of tonality across the image. I may have to jump back up and readjust some regional settings that I had made and really make all of the edits from global, regional, and targeted very harmonious. And so just know that you may need to loop back at certain times as you're doing these image assessments. So let's go ahead and take a look at an image that I have picked for editing, and I will walk you through kind of the assessment that I'll make of this image. This is a shot in the Columbia River Gorge of Emerald Falls, and it's one that I chose to work on. So as I'm looking at this image, the first thing that I look at is, how's the light? Is the light good? Is it bad? Is it harsh? Is it soft? Is it unbalanced throughout the scene? That type of thing. I'll do kind of a light assessment, and really that's almost a global question that you would ask yourself. I'll start over here on the left. So the lighting along this left bank is really, really good. I like it. There's a lot of stuff to work with. As I move towards the back of the image, it's a little bit brighter in the back, and I can see that. What I find is that the image is a little bit flat back there. So I lose a little bit of depth back there because of the light, but still enough to work with. I come over here to this right wall. It got some really deep shadows, some nice blacks, lots of good stuff in there. But what I do notice is that the tonality of the right side of the image is really dark and heavy compared to the background of the image, which is light and flat, and the left side is fairly neutral. So I'd kind of like to balance the tonality of light and dark out a little bit across the image. The next thing, of course, that catches your eye is the water. First thing that I notice is that the waterfall is a little bit hot, a little bit bright. So what I'd like to do is turn down the brightness of this water just a little bit, because it's really dominating the scene. Granted, the waterfall is the main picture or the main element of this scene, but I don't want it as bright as it is. And I'm also losing a little bit of detail here where I've clipped a little bit of the water right in through here, made it too bright, because I was trying to properly expose across the entire scene. This is a little bit of a tough scene because it is so high contrast, very dark rocks, very bright water, lots of midtones throughout the entire scene. So I know that I need to adjust sort of the greens and the lights in the foliage and the rocks, make that a little even across the tones. I know the white water I need to tone down a little bit, and I might also want to see if I can bring out a little bit of the striations of the water to help make that a little bit more artistic. Oh, I apologize for that. Let me go back. Sorry about that. So I want to bring a little bit more definition out in the water right here. The other thing that catches my eye is some of the really deep dark shadows back in here and right up in here and right up in here and through here. I might want to bring out some of those shadows, bring a little bit of detail back into this image. So I know I want to work on those shadows. Once I get done sort of assessing the light throughout the image, the darks and the lights, what I want to do, then I start looking at color and assessing color. Granted, we're in the Columbia River Gorge, typically known for really crisp greens and very vibrant greens within the gorge. This is a raw file that we're looking at, so the colors aren't popping. So what I will want to do is give some attention to the green and make sure that the greens pop enough, but not overcook them. It's one of the easy things to do in doing gorge shots like this. It's a lot of people overcook the greens, make them too vibrant, too green, too saturated. It's a tendency because you're just inundated with greens when you're there, and so your perception when you come back to process is just overwhelming green. Well, those of us that are sitting at home watching this, we don't want to be assaulted with green. So keep your color edits in check. So I'll do a little bit of work in the greens. I maybe will pop the vibrance a little bit, maybe pop the saturation a little bit. Don't need to do much else from a color perspective. Other things I'll look at in this image, is there any cleanup work that needs to be done? So one thing that our eyes are really drawn to is straight lines. So when I look at this image, there's a beautiful straight line of this tree trunk growing right next to the water. That's awesome. This tree trunk vertically, that still works. What we don't like typically as humans is to see intersecting lines going off at an angle, because really I'm telling a vertical story here. The water's kind of vertical, it's up and down. The stream is vertical. The trees are vertical. But it's some of these horizontal branches that catch the viewer's eyes that I maybe want to look at and get rid of. There's one right over here in the upper right. This branch I might want to get rid of. I'll look at it in a little bit larger frame and see if I want to get rid of it. The other one that really catches my eye is this branch back here. Those two I may want to get rid of. The rest of the logs that are sort of at an angle or horizontal, the way they're coming into the frame, it's acceptable and it's pleasing to the eye. So I'll leave those, but it's really these kind of outliers you look for. So as you're assessing an image, look for things that are distracting for you and those things that might be distracting for a viewer. Other things that catch my eye as being potentially distracting is this one brighter log right back here. That's a little bit distracting to me, but maybe I can look past it. The other thing that catches my eye is this little dark spot of water right here. That catches my eye as being distractive. As a viewer, I'm expecting the water to be sort of continuous as it goes over the ledge. But to have that little pokey of black right in the middle of it, it catches my eye. And as I look at this image, my eye keeps coming back to that black spot as an anomaly in the color and the pattern. So look for anomalies, look for distractions, and you can make an artistic choice whether you want to leave them in or take them out. Especially in scenes like this, it's a really busy scene. There's a lot of stuff in this image, a lot of information for the viewer to look at. So do your best to sort of guide the viewer's eyes through subtle processing techniques to tell the story that you want to tell in this image. And for me, this is about the waterfall. It's the pour over of the waterfall coming from a stream further uphill. And you get little glimpses of the stream. You don't really know where it comes from or where it starts, but it's this sort of magical stream that appears up the hill and comes down and eventually spills over the falls. You're in a fairly narrow gorge, so I want to create a feeling of intimacy within this scene, and I can do that with some subtle shadings and some vignettes. Um, but really decide on what type of story you want to tell to your viewer. So real quickly, that was kind of my image assessment for this image. Let's do one more real quick while we have the time. So here's a shot from the kind of the northeast side of Mount Hood. This is out in Hood River. It's a barn out in a pear orchard with a setting sun and kind of illuminating Mount Hood in the background. Good image. Technically, it's okay. But from the first thing I'll do is again assess the light of this image. You know, from a global settings, one of the first things I'll ask, is it too warm or too cool? So I might make a white balance adjustment to this. Next thing is, how is the light falling across the scene? Is it even lighting? Do I like a little bit of uneven lighting that'll bring drama to the scene? So uneven lighting in this case, I've got sunlit on the trees, upper half of the trees, the bottom half are in shade. Do I like that? Yes and no. The things that I'd like to do is really make the barn stand out a little bit more, because this is a really vibrant red when you see it. So I would like to make the barn pop a little bit more. I'd like to make this transition a little bit smoother between the dark of the upper sky and the light of the lower sky. Perhaps warm the mountain up just a little bit. I would like to dehaze the mountain. I don't have dehaze in this version of Lightroom, so I'll do it manually in Photoshop. Other things that catch my eye from a distraction perspective, I have this random vertical line, this pole that's right here. I've got a pole right back there. I've got a white pole down here at the bottom. I've got a couple of poles over here, here, sticking out of the side of the barn. I'll work to get rid of those. The reflection in this small little stream down at the bottom of the image is slightly distracting to me. I may do something with that. So I know that there's things that I want to do with this image. I'm still not completely sure what I want to do from a lighting perspective. Because it is sunset, I want to give the viewer the impression that the sun is setting. So I do need some darks in there, and I need to have, kind of portray that feeling of a setting sun. So I don't want it completely even lighting throughout the scene, but I would like to even it out a little bit, even some of the tonalities out across this image, so that it's a little bit more pleasing to see, and I can direct the viewer's eyes a little bit clearer to the barn and then up to the mountain. So that's it for just a kind of a quick highlight of how I assess images. I'll go in the next video, I'll go through and start making some edits. I'll show you some of the tools that I use, and then I will go through and start making some edits to some of these images, and we'll see where we go from there. All right, thanks for watching and have a great day.